Hi, I'm Alex, your host, and this is No Code World Radio, in which I travel the world to meet the most interesting people in the no-code space. I am now in Lisbon after a fantastic trip in the south of Spain. I went from Barcelona to Lisbon by land, plane and bus. It was a great trip, fantastic cities. I especially loved Cordoba. But now I'm in Lisbon, a very multicultural city with very interesting people, especially in the tech industry and even in the no-code space. I was very lucky to have a chance to meet with Bruno Amaral. Originally, I knew him via Camille Blanchot from the French Notion community, and she told me that Bruno was someone very worth having a chat with. So here we are, I'll let you with the conversation. This is episode 2 of the third season of the No Code World Radio podcast. Hi Bruno, thanks for meeting me here in Lisbon. Thanks for taking the time to show me around a little bit. Very nice, lovely place. So you were among the people that were recommended to me by Camille on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So I'm very happy that we have a chance to talk a little bit more and to record this. I want to know more about what you're doing and, of course, a bit what's your use of no-code tools. Just to start, can you please introduce yourself?
Okay, that's always hard because I don't really fit in a box like people would like. But I like to say that I'm a communication strategist and I've been through all of the trenches. I started first as a community manager. I started my blog in 2006 talking about digital communication, and I've been moving up ever since then. I have over 15 years of experience by now, give or take a few.
What's your background? What did you study?
Communication, actually. My background is public relations.
Okay.
And then I took a master's in strategic management of public relations and communication.
Okay.
Where I actually learned more than I was expecting.
Okay. And now, so because we will see in this discussion that you're doing some quite technical stuff, mm-hmm. You didn't learn coding or anything really in school, or did you?
In school, by the time I had coding classes, I already knew how to do it.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting because did you, on the side, were you always interested into?
Yeah. Because it all began, I had a computer since I was 9.
Okay.
And a friend of mine first taught me how to program in Bash.
Okay.
So yeah, sure, let's try it. It sounds cool. And we actually built a small password manager, a login screen for the computer because it was an old Olivetti.
Okay. Were you using it on Linux or?
No, it was a DOS.
Okay.
So we were just asking for the password. And yeah, we were kids, 9, 10 years, so we were just fiddling with the computer, nothing else. But what else?
Okay, so I'm always curious because we will talk about, no-code tools and things like that, and I liked, the variety of backgrounds. But yeah, it's also kind of important, yes. The way you're going to.
Yeah, no. For me, it started as an hobby, but then I started making friends in the tech scene in Lisbon.
Okay.
They call themselves the Lobsters.
Okay.
And the Lobsters are my core group of friends, and most of them come from IT, and I have learned so much from them. They give pointers on tools. They help me solve some problems with programming that I sometimes have. And yeah, I even programmed my mobile house thanks to the stuff that I learned from them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll get to that. So yeah, tell me a bit more maybe what you're doing, like the communication part of your job, okay. And the type of projects you're working on.
So I work for a utilities group here in Portugal called EDP, who has operations all over the world. And for the last 5 years or so, I've been product owner in some digital projects that the company has for our corporate websites mostly. Other things that I do, I also have some consultancy and I also teach. So and I also have a few other side projects that we can go on after. And whenever I try to, it can be a strategy for a client or it can be a report on analytics. I always try to be as lazy as possible.
Okay. But that's typically like a programmer would try to be. It's the mindset.
Yeah. So I try to come up with a framework or a sort of framework for the project so that I can deliver in better quality. And lately I've been using Notion for that. So whenever I have a report that I need to write, it starts in Notion. And then I will export to Markdown, and then I will prepare a proper document for the client. And I find that it works quite well because during the process of building the document, the client can participate and ask questions and ask for amendments.
What kind of clients are you working on?
Okay, so mostly my clients are actually communication agencies. When they have a problem that is either too complex or they're shorthanded for some reason, they will come to me and I will either take on the project or I will help them find someone that can handle it. This is through what I call the Lisbon Collective. And the sectors vary completely. It can be health, it can be bank, I had an online store a while ago as well, so it can vary a lot.
Okay. And I like that you're talking about communication with the client, in documentation. I think this is something we talked a little bit about it, before recording. And I think it's something that people don't do enough. Let's say freelancers, I would say, in the no-code space, for what I've seen, at least in France. Can you maybe explain why you think it's important, and maybe some pointers, like why and how to do it?
Well, first, because my memory sucks. That's the first one.
I think people overestimate their memory sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to probably, even I'm sure it doesn't suck, but it's you know what I mean. It's like,
I know what you mean, yeah. But it can either be Notion or it can be some code that I'm working on. If it's code, I try to leave little comments along the code so that I can remember what I was trying to do and how it works. If it's a report on Notion or if it's a task on Notion that I need to keep more people up to speed with, what I will do is I will use the comments as much as possible. Sometimes it's just between me and myself, but so that I know this is what I'm trying to do and this is what I'm going to need to do next. It speeds up the process for me. And then if it's on an issue that I'm working with another team that involves code, I will also keep them up to speed. Listen, I've done this, I'm going to do this next. It gives them some reassurance that, okay, since we're all remote, but we see what he's doing, what's going on. And if he's silent for too long, we can just ping him and, hey, what's up?
Yeah, no, it's very important. I think, it's like you do things for yourself in the future, like you document your comment thing.
And I use the Google Calendar for that as well. So, for example, let's say that we meet today, I can schedule from a year from now to send you an email saying, hey, by the way, how have you been? And sometimes I do it for myself. Like, Bruno, hey, it's been 1 year since you did this and that. How did it go?
Okay.
Because that way I can track back and, okay, so I had this idea and I'm looking back now 1 year after and it failed. So I'll need to think about this next time that I'm doing something on the same line. And also, little pats on the back are also good. Hey, listen, it's been a year since you've been doing so-and-so. Hope you're doing okay.
That's very interesting use. I've never thought about that. I use calendar like many people also, like as a to-do list kind of thing, like because time boxing, like when I'm going to do this, I assign, but I never thought about doing this like long time in the future. Like say even like, 6 months, say, okay, how did you forget about this project or did you do it or it's interesting.
I do it mostly for personal reasons, not just work.
Yeah.
Work is only if I have like a long-time client or a long-time project. But yeah, mostly it's to keep tabs on myself and to make me rethink.
Yeah, no, it's a good way. I don't know, did you ever thought about maybe doing that with an email that you would send yourself now that you would receive in the future or something like this?
I saw that there was a service for that. I decided not to use it because I figured I already get notifications that are important on my calendar.
Yeah.
And my email is a mess. In fact, my email is such a mess that I devised a system to organize my invoices using a tool called Node-RED.
Yeah.
So what Node-RED does, he reads my email and anything that is tagged invoice automatically by the Gmail filters, he saves the PDF into the invoices archive on my Synology.
Okay. Can you explain what's Node-RED? I think because this is very interesting and it's a tool that we don't talk so much about in the no-code community. And I think there are reasons for that. I think it's very interesting.
There is a learning curve, yeah. You need to install it.
Yeah, that's the first thing.
That's the first obstacle. But once it's up and running, there's a million things that you can do.
Just out of curiosity, do you have it installed somewhere like here, like it's local, or do you have it online?
I have it local. And the way that it works is, think about it as Zapier on steroids. So you can install different modules, and each module is a box, and you can connect the boxes. And in each box, you can configure different actions. It can be a JavaScript code, or it can be just something as simple as, if the property that you received contains this string, do this or do that. And I use it for everything. I use it to control the house. I use it to read my email, to control a chatbot on Telegram. So it's very versatile. It's a bit between programming and no code. It's on the barrier between the two.
It looks like, I would say, you can correct me, a bit like NI10. Do you know this tool?
Yes.
Or maybe Integromat or Make, it's called now. You know, it's like this, like those nodes that you link to each other,
Exactly.
which is definitely not Zapier. Zapier is very different. But I think it's interesting because, as you said, it's like, for me, it's visual programming. You know, you don't write code, but you're really programming.
Yeah, you think about the logic, and then the system handles the parameters that you need to configure.
Yeah, but it makes sense. I asked you if it was installed locally or online, but it has to be locally if you want to control your lights, I guess,
Yeah.
and everything. Okay, do you have it just, and then we can, but do you install it on a Raspberry Pi or?
I first installed it on Raspberry Pi, but I had the old version. So I eventually bought an Intel computer, a very small one.
A new?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's running on my drawer, yeah.
Okay.
Drawer is a word, no? Yeah, it is. So it's there. I don't even have to think about it. I just need to update it every once in a while.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's a very interesting tool. Yeah, you mentioned chatbots, and I think this is something I definitely want to talk about because that's very unusual also, I would say. Not like people know it, but I haven't seen many people using chatbots. And for instance, just when we were earlier, you were showing me how you added a task to your to-do list, which many people would do probably directly in Notion. You did that through a chatbot.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Because I have projects that I communicate with the team mostly through Telegram or other chat apps. And I'm always switching between apps for instant communication with them. So I figured, well, if I always have Telegram open anyway, it's easier to just switch to that one and send a command to the bot and let it do the hard work. Because that way I'm not losing focus. It's one of the problems that I sometimes have because I like so many things that sometimes I really need to focus on what I'm doing. If I switch to Notion, there's just too much visual things happening there. And it's an easier way. I just switch, give it the title of the task, the context, and the client, done. And I can forget about it then.
Yeah, no, but it's very interesting because you're right. And I think we tend to forget about that. When you go into your tool, like your management tool, whatever, like that's Notion, and you want to do one simple thing, like input data, you will automatically your eyes will be attracted to something else. Maybe it's in the sidebar, you will see a project that you also want to do something. And so it will, it's like your phone, when you receive a notification, you check the notification, but I mean, at least for myself, I always check another notification and then I go on Twitter and something like this. It's the worst, Yeah. And, but I never thought about that with Notion, for instance, because it's a professional tool. And it's good, I think, sometimes even for us, like to abstract ourselves, even from those tools. And if you want to add a task, have it in the most simplest way. Yeah. So the chatbot. So I like the word you told me. This chatbot. It has a name.
Johnny 5.
Johnny 5, and it's your butler.
It's my butler. Yeah, it's based on a movie that I really liked, a series of movies. Johnny 5 was a robot that was struck by lightning and became self-aware. The 80s. And he has a very nice personality, and he's always trying to learn, and he's always trying to help humans. And in the meantime, his friends are also always trying to help him escape from the military that want to weaponize him. And I really like his personality. And I figured if I'm going to have a bot, I'm going to give it a nice name. All my bots have nice names because of that.
Yeah. What else can you do?
Well, you can read my email and organize invoices. You can add tasks to Notion. You can send me notifications about stuff that's been happening on my system, like if one of the indexers that I have running isn't working, because I have several sites that build automatically. Sometimes they fail for a number of reasons, so I get a notification from Johnny. Hey, listen, this time the build process failed, you need to check it out. Or if my front door, if it's open, he sends me a text message saying, hey, someone opened the door and you're not home, so what's going on?
Okay. And it knows when you're home, when you're not?
It does, because he integrates with another system that is also no code called Home Assistant. And what Home Assistant does is it integrates any kind of IoT device that you can think of, and you can plug it in either to Node-RED or to a bot like Johnny. I use Node-RED mostly as an interface between the two, because that way everything's on the same place. And again, I don't like to lose focus too much.
Yeah. How is it difficult to build such a bot?
It depends on the person. I'm lucky enough to have friends that give me pointers and been teaching me a lot. So there is a learning curve, but in the end, it can become a very powerful tool.
Does it require code or?
A Home Assistant can be installed with a Docker container, so it doesn't require code.
Okay. Yeah.
What might require some code is if you want to start using Node-RED and you want some expedited integration or something a bit more complex, that might require some code. But even that, between Home Assistant and Node-RED, there's a plugin. And between Node-RED and Telegram, there's another plugin. So you can do mostly no code.
Okay. And so, for instance, when you add the task to Notion, so you're in Telegram, you send a message.
Mm-hmm.
Who's receiving it?
Johnny receives it.
Okay, but where does
Node-RED? It starts in Node-RED, and then Node-RED knows, okay, so this is a task, therefore it's this flow.
Okay.
And when the flow ends, Johnny sends me a text message with the link to the task on Notion, just to confirm that it was created.
And so I can imagine that in Node-RED, it's like through the Notion API that you're... Okay.
As soon as it came out, I started fiddling with it.
I can imagine. Many people were waiting for it and very excited.
Very. Because I like to save time as much as possible. And Notion has been a great tool for that. Not just because of the task management, but also if I'm on a project or if I'm building a branding document, it's perfect for that because I can structure it just the way I like it. And I know that I can export the PDF. And I'll be happy, the client's happy. It works quite well.
Do you remember how you discovered Notion?
Well, I used it once because I found it on Twitter and it didn't work for me. And then I tried it again because I noticed that the community for Notion Portugal was booming a bit on Twitter as well. So I decided to give it another try. Because one of my friends also is an ambassador, Gustavo Pimenta. And I decided, well, let's give it another go. And once I started seeing the templates that people were sharing, oh wait, so this isn't task management. You're building dashboards. You're building your tool. This is for a process. Now I get it. And I started changing the way that I was using Notion.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how people are passionate about Notion and how the community, like locally or internationally, is building around it. It's very impressive. I don't know, maybe it's also because they build this ambassador program that is quite powerful, or I don't know, but it's like, because like for instance in France, maybe it's the same here, there is this no-code France community around no-code tools, but then there is only one tool that has its own local community, which is called Notion en français, which is the Notion in French. And I think, and it's the only one, Airtable doesn't have a French community, Webflow doesn't have a French community. It's very impressive, and it's, I don't know, do you see the same? Can you see an explanation for that?
It's hard to build a community, and that's the first thing. What I like about no-code is it focuses on people first. And I can understand that, especially with a tool so flexible as Notion, you need to ask people, hey, listen, I have this problem. Do you have any solution for it? How are you solving this kind of thing? And since you get to see the templates that others are using, I think that's perfect. So put that next to the fact that Notion is not meant for programmers. It's meant to people that like to organize and have a structure on how their process to complete a task or a project should be. In that case, it's perfect. And the thing about the IT community is they have their own tools for communication. So maybe those communities already exist on GitHub, on Discord, other platforms, but they're just silos. And Notion has the possibility of going outside those silos because you find people on Twitter, you find people on Discord for the Portuguese community in this case. You can find them on meetups. And sometimes you're just talking with friends on some other app and, okay, I'll put that on my Notion. Oh, you use Notion too.
Yeah, that's interesting because maybe what you're saying is there are groups, coders, for instance, that have already their tools. And Notion is addressing like all the people who don't have their own tool, they can use Notion. So it brings people from many different backgrounds. You have students who are using Notion, you have communication, or maybe designers also using because those people so far didn't
perfect
have.
For briefings. If you want to give a designer a good briefing, Notion is perfect because you can have all kinds of media, images, video, whatever, text, and you can use the same templates for the briefing. It's top notch. I really like that.
Yeah, definitely. Before we talk about maybe maybe the other tools that you might use, do you have, I don't know, what's your favorite trick on Notion?
My favorite trick, right now, it's the way that you can organize the databases with their different tabs.
Yeah.
Because I used to have a huge list of
the views. Yeah.
Context, client, and sometimes a context can have like 3 clients or projects. That's one of the things that I like most lately. Another one is the templates, because if I'm preparing an Instagram post for one of my personal projects, I like to keep it on a calendar, and I like to be able to just click the template to say, this is an Instagram post. And it gives me the checklist, the sizes, and a place to hold the files. And if I'm working with a designer, I can just say, hey, listen, the copy is ready. I have some photos there that you can use. Let me know when it's done, just put it there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I like most about it.
Yeah, I think people don't use enough the templates, I would say.
Yeah.
Like or people, I would say, maybe people who are beginning with Notion, they are underestimating it. Or maybe also it's a bit of a more advanced feature, like at least the database templates. I mean, because first you need to understand what this database, how it works, and then
I'm not a complete idiot, and I still don't understand fully how the database works. I have to be very honest with that. The roll-ups, I still haven't figured out exactly how to use them for my own benefit, but everything else.
Well, this is the relationship part of the. It's and they made some changes also recently about that. So
okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, but no, it's it's everything. I think that's why I like with Notion that there are so many levels of understanding and usage, and I think it's even great just to type text. It's very nice. People just do that even if they click, and they don't use the / command, and it's already nice, and then slowly you upgrade with your need, and then you can arrive to, I don't know, I've seen experts doing like crazy things, like that just don't even understand like the way their database is organized. And
but in my case, if a system is becoming too complex, it means I'm doing something wrong.
That's true, yeah.
So I try to avoid it. When I'm a bit overboard on this one, I'm having fun, but
yeah, you're right. And I think Notion has such a minimalism mindset and spirit that people who are building too complex things, I would say, are, I don't know, it's not a judgment, but maybe they're going too far. It's not the right tool. It's not like they don't embrace like really the mindset.
However, to their defense, it's also about how each one of us thinks.
True.
For example, I'm a very logical and relationship kind of thing in my thought process. But sometimes I need to switch to a more creative part. So I end up writing on walls and whatever. But the point is, some people think in terms of more mathematics and logic. So a complex system for them is perfect. I might need a lot of flexibility, therefore my system needs to be simple. And I prefer sometimes to copy and to have different elements showing the same kind of information but in different formats, like the status of the posts that I've been preparing and the calendar. So those are two side by side. It's the same database, different views. Someone else might prefer, oh no, but I want the tabs so that I can switch between them. That's fine.
It's true. No, it's true. No, you're right. I think everyone should make themselves comfortable with using the tool. And I totally agree on the fact that, like there shouldn't be one way to use Notion that would be the right way. And it's just like on terms of like it's not the complexity, is like but it's true with other tools. I feel like sometimes, like especially like no-coders, they like no-code tools so much that they want to do overly complicated things and connect them to each other. Like for instance, I've seen people, they were doing their database in Airtable, and then embedding views in Notion. And it's like, why not? But I feel like, maybe there is a way to do everything in Notion or in Airtable, But it's just like, this kind of enthusiasm. But I guess comes also with the experience.
Yeah, we get carried away.
No, it's nice. That's why also one of the things I like, we learn a lot about getting carried away. Are there other tools, other tools that you use? No-code tools, I would say.
No-code tools. I use a lot of text files outside of Notion sometimes. If I'm writing a blog post, for example, I prefer to use a Markdown file because it's the same system as Notion. Notion supports Markdown, so it's perfect. But if I'm writing a blog post, it's easier for me to just throw everything. And I use an app for that called Typora.
Okay. And
it's perfect because I can just drag photos there and it's all formatted. But then I switch to the site system that I use. It's called Hugo. Yeah. And the way that it works is you need to have the Markdown file, but you need front matter with the properties. So when the blog post is ready, I'll just switch to the GitHub repo that I have for the blog. And then I just add the front matter, make sure everything's right. And then I just publish it.
So it's going to generate like the static files or...
Yeah, it generates the static files, everything's on there. Because I also have a tiny script for that prepares the folder structure and puts the initial front matter and just lets me just paste the rest of the markdown.
You were telling me you use quite a bit of Python.
That's true. I've been using Python more and more lately.
So would you say it's like whenever you're stuck with no code that you use Python, or you just like straight away because you know how to use?
So Python for me fits in two categories. The first one is if I'm developing a web project. I prefer to use Python because lately I've been using a framework called Django, which is Python. Mm. Then if I have something complex to do on my system, on my computer, I'll either use the Apple shortcuts, or I will use Python if it's something very related to the file system, because I find it a bit easier to just write that code down. But if possible, I'll try to use the shortcuts app. Because it's visual, because I know that it's not going away anytime soon, and because sometimes the problem is simple. I don't need to go into setting up a Python script to do something simple that I'll have to either export to a Mac app or to run from the terminal.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with code, it's like first you have to write it, but then you have to also find the way it's going to be executed.
Exactly.
Say, is it an app? Is it something that triggers regularly? Like you have all this like kind of management to do around it.
And on the Mac, I use a Spotlight a lot. So if I want to, my favorite app that I built is the Clean Desktop app. Okay. And what it does is it takes everything that's on my desktop, puts it on a folder called Archive, and adds a subfolder with the date. Okay. That way, if I was working for a project back in last month, I could just go through those days and find the last version of the document. And once that folder is too big, I can just put it on the Synology to archive and everybody's happy. For that, the Shortcuts app was perfect. I could have done it in Python, sure, but what's the use?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's super interesting. I'm curious to know a bit more about just the way you work. Like, do you have any productivity habits, or there's something that it's a bit outside of the tools, but yeah, just.
So Monday mornings are just for planning, because let's face it, nobody functions well on a Monday morning. At least I don't. So what I do is I open Notion where I have my main task list, and I just pick the highlights for the day or the week if necessary. And those highlights will be on another view on top of that home page. And that's what I pick. So this is what really needs to get done by the end of the day or by the end of the week. Maximum 3. And then it's just day-to-day management. On the afternoon, I'll really roll up my sleeves and start getting things done. Because first it's just getting the context of what the week is going to be. If possible, I'll review on Fridays to make sure, okay, so next 2 days I need to rest, so let's see what needs to be prepared for Monday's planning. It's mostly just making sure what's been done and what's waiting for someone to have the task lists running smoothly. But again, it depends on the project. Some projects, I don't use Notion at all. What I do is, for example, I have a project now called Gregory MS. And I want it to be as transparent as possible. And Notion doesn't help with that. So using the no-code philosophy, I turn things around. So I always keep the issues on GitHub up to date with what I'm trying to do. Publicly. And I'll write down comments saying, okay, so I've tried this and that. It's not working because of this and that. I'll get back to it anytime soon. Also hoping that someone will step in and help me with more knowledge than I am.
This is really like the open source philosophy also. It's really allowed with GitHub and this type of platform.
Yeah, and I think it's perfect for that. Even for content projects, it can be very useful. For example, the people at Cloudflare, their documentation is all on GitHub. So anyone can use it to read the documentation, which is a bit easier to search, and then they can suggest improvements, which I think is perfect.
Yeah, definitely translate it also.
Translate it as well.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's interesting because I realize that, because lately on Twitter, there's this whole thing like build in public. And in the no-code space, people are very into that. Like there's, but truth is like it's already been a long time that, like the open source communities have been building in public, literally. Like since like, I don't know, the 80s or something, and especially through those versioning systems, and which is now the biggest is Git and GitHub as a platform. But yeah, no, it's interesting, and the issues is really like this.
And I feel that people need to look at the tools more like, what can I do with this, rather than what was it meant for?
Yeah.
Because there was a country that had the whole constitution written on GitHub. So everyone could go and just suggest amendments to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a different system. It involves a process of political acceptance and voting, but still, it's interesting.
Yeah. No, but it makes me realize that there is something that is missing. I wouldn't say a GitHub for no code, but this like the versioning, like this, the pull requests and this type of things. Like that would be great if there was that in Notion, for instance. Because right now,
is it necessary? Because you can also use the comments.
Yeah, but let's say like, how do you approve? Like the merging thing. That's why I like with the code, and it's like, okay, someone makes a suggestion, and then people can review it. Maybe they can vote for it also, and then when it's reviewed, you push a button, then it's merged with the source, and you get.
Okay, I have a solution for that doesn't involve code. So when I'm working on something with a colleague, he will write a comment on Notion with the change that he wants to make to that paragraph or to that table. And there's always a resolve button.
Yeah.
So I'll answer to him on the comments, I'll make the change, and then I'll just click resolve once I know that he's read it. That helps. It's a bit atomic in the sense that you have to go change by change instead of merging everything all together.
Yeah, and also, what's missing in Notion, like where I just talked with my co-founder the other day, is so the comments are great, I agree with that, but it's like in Google Docs, you have the review and suggestions thing, and this would be great, it's like you type the suggestion, then someone reviews it, and when it says yes, it makes because we have the same problem, like because we're writing a book right now, and so someone is writing like the chapter, and so when we're reviewing and say, okay, this would be nice to put it in a different way. And so the person has to do exactly what you were saying, copy paste or, adapt and put it and then say resolve. Yeah. And it's okay, but it's not as straightforward.
It's not. The only alternative that I see is embedding the Google Doc into the Notion page. It's a bit cumbersome to click, go to another page and do something else.
But then you lose the pleasure. I mean, for this
of focusing.
Yeah, and also like, you know, just typing in the markdown and, you know, typing in Notion, I think is just great, you know, like when you're used to using the command slash, the, you know, like the...
Yeah, I don't use a mouse at all. I just use the trackpad and the keyboard. And that's why my command key is also, it's always getting either stuck or scratched because of my fingernail. Because I'm always alt-tabbing between apps. Because it works for me. That way I'm focused. I have one app in front of me. If I need to switch for a quick look at Excel or something else, I'll just tap, 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 tap. Okay, this is it. Tap, 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 go back. It works. It's different than, okay, just pick the app. Da, da, da. If you're going all the way to the other side of the screen to pick the app that you want to open, for me, it takes focus away. So the more I just focus on muscle memory, the better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's why I also use Spotlight to launch all the apps and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because it's like, you know, in the movies, like the guys, they only type on their keyboard, you know, but they're doing like those crazy things on screens. And then usually in our daily life, we use the mouse a lot, you know, to go. But then now, and especially with Notion, and like you can really truly do everything just with your keyboard, you know, really like that, you know, and you're becoming closer to this like kind of hacker, like, you know, like just like damn. But it's true, yeah. I like what you're saying. Cool. So, no, it's super interesting. I think we've talked about most of the things I wanted to ask you about. More to get into, just to finish on this episode, about the locally, what's happening locally, like in the community. Do you meet other no-code or Notion enthusiasts in Lisbon?
Mostly through Notion, because they sometimes have meetups happening and they are always on Discord. So I end up meeting them along. What else?
Do you know if there is any like more like general no-code?
There isn't that I know of. And I think it's a shame because we have a lot that we can learn from each other.
No.
Because it's all about the people in the community, right?
Yeah.
So the more you have a thriving community, the more creativity comes out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's like we were talking about, we all think differently. Some people are more analytical, some people are more creative, some people are convergent, others are divergent. That's the way the world works. And the more you get different people together, the more ideas can come out and the more innovation comes out of those.
Yeah, no, definitely. And on this, you know, I think also here you have Lisbon is very attractive for many people. Like, you know, there are so many people from various backgrounds and from various countries that I feel like are coming here. That, you know, it's even more, it seems like a very, very dynamic hub, I would say. But I don't know, how do you think about that? Like in the past years, are things changed with the pandemic also? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to be very honest and transparent. I think the Portuguese have a bad reputation in the tech scene.
Okay.
It's not deserved, but I feel that we do have a bad reputation. So I noticed in other situations a bit of resistance when I show up as, oh, I'm from Portugal. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. It's fine. That's the way people are, and it's a stereotype that we need to deconstruct as we go along. So I noticed that in the communities. And also in Portugal, you have different levels of digital literacy, completely different. For example, if I'm working with a communication agency, it's easy to get them on board with Notion. But if I'm trying to reach out to a different kind of audience, say doctors or researchers, it's very hard. The tool that I was telling you about, Gregory, it's a research tool. So it searches different scientific publications and it gathers all the articles. It analyzes the text, identifies what's relevant, and tweets about it. There was a lot of code involved, but the part of tweeting is a Zapier integration. And I'm trying to get people on board to use the app because there's another app that it incorporates called Metabase. that allows me to build dashboards with all the information that Gregory collects. So I know how many articles were published, where, by whom, if they were relevant, if they're not relevant. I have 50,000 authors indexed by Gregory. And I've been trying to teach people, mostly from libraries and other repositories, to use that tool for their daily job. But it's not easy, because if you really want to teach someone who is used to working in a certain way, a bit an old-fashioned way, I have to say, which is fine because it worked for them for years and years. It's normal to have some resistance. But if you want to teach them how to adopt the no-code philosophy, you really have to sit down with them and just show them where to click.
It's okay. It's interesting. I think this is many places. You know, this like digital literacy you're talking about. I think it's a very important topic in our world. You know, and it's true. Depending on the country, the levels, like the gap can vary. Yeah. But I think it's everywhere. You know, in Europe at least. You know, there's still a big gap to be bridged. And I think no code comes in this gap. You know, helps. So
it is perfectly in that gap. Because it's all about the people. In your last episode, you were talking with Tasha about the shadow IT.
Yeah.
And I think that companies are missing out on the no-code scene. Because if they decide that, okay, so let's give everyone a Notion account so that they can build their own dashboards and their own process. Perfect. You can even have a budgeting system and a communication planning tool inside of Notion. You don't need some fancy IT company to devise a specific tool for your needs. Everything is there. Everything is approved. There's revisions. You can check who changed what and why.
No.
And then what you have is the IT departments focused on the technology, not focused on the people. They should think more, okay, so let me connect with my stakeholders, figure out what's been going on, sit down with them and see how they do things. Because maybe I can just come up with something very simple that's going to make their job easier.
Yeah, and I would add that, it's important to allow a little bit of creativity and flexibility to those users and be a bit surprised. But this is like the IT departments, usually that's exactly what they want to avoid. And I think, as you were saying, like they should embrace that instead.
Yeah, build a sandbox where people can do whatever they want. And that way they end up leaving the company in any way. And if someone leaves and takes away all the knowledge on how to use that certain Excel spreadsheet filled with macros, then we have a problem for the IT department that has to go down the rabbit hole of figuring out what that person was coding and why.
And this is a much worse problem than shadow IT.
Yeah.
Like legacy of, the Excel files, I think, is the best example, like of those files that no one can touch, but they're there and they survive. They're makers, and they become so important for the company that they can't do anything about it. And
there's a story here in Portugal. So the train company, they hired an agency to come up with a tool to be used by the train inspectors. And the tool was supposed to give them schedules of the trains and a bunch of other information that they needed. And so the first thing that the UX team did was, okay, let's talk with the users. Let's sit down with the users. And they were asking them, so what information do you need on a mobile app for this? Actually, the one that I have in Maquinista. Maquinista is the Portuguese word for machinist. And there's a twist here, because it was actually an iPhone app built by a guy that worked for the trains. And he was selling subscriptions so that the other colleagues would use the app to get the schedules, to get the changes of shift, everything. And the UX team was like, yeah, this is pretty much all that we were thinking about.
But it's crazy that he was selling it. It's the first time I hear that, because I can imagine that I've seen before, like, people building something, on their own without the IT department, what just we were saying. But I've never heard of like someone doing that and selling it to his colleagues.
But because it makes sense, because it was an Apple app, so an iOS app. So it had to pay for at least 100 euros by itself a year. And if it's useful for people,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. Cool. No, it's super interesting. We'll just finish with one last question. What's your favorite thing to do in Lisbon?
Oh, so many. But whenever I'm feeling a bit stressed, I like to take my bike out and just go to the garden in Gulbenkian and just wind down there. That's one of the things. And what I've been doing lately is I work from home. So I end up going to the cafes to either relax or to work, depending. I have different places for different kinds of moods. If I'm working, I usually go to one that's close to my place. But if I want to relax, I have a few others that I just go there with the book and just stay there. More things that I like to do around here. We have a culture scene that's been growing.
Something that you would recommend to someone who comes visit, or someone like me who spends a month here?
I would recommend the Jazz in August by Gulbenkian. It's an interesting experience.
Okay.
Because they have a very good curator of the bands that go and play. The museums that we have some very good hidden gems. So one of my favorite places to relax as well is in the Tile Museum.
Okay.
Because it has an amazing garden inside. And you can I think they even have Wi-Fi, so it's perfect. Because a while back I was doing a small museum tour and I was writing it all on my blog. Because that's another thing. Whenever I'm doing one of these side projects, there's a section on my blog called The Stories. Okay. And it gathers all those tiny bits and pieces into the same place. It's not like a category. It's more like a closed series. And this was one of the first ones. Just going to the different museums and just, for the first time, looking at the city that I live in.
Yeah.
So I went to the Museum of Ancient Art, Museum of Modern Art, of course, Perargo, to the Tile Museum, to MAT. So yeah, those are some of the places that I would recommend here. Okay. But there's a bunch of other things. The best places are the small ones, Okay. So if you want a glass of wine, if you go to like the trendy place in Martim Muniz Topo, sure, if it's your thing, I'm happy that you're having fun. But if you want to get a real feel about the people in Lisbon, you have to go to the small places. There's one called A Viagem das Horas, the trip of the hours. There's another one called O Primo do Queijo, the cousin of the cheese.
Okay. You will need to send me those so I can put them in the notes of the episode.
I actually have a Notion page.
Oh, perfect. Fantastic.
So yeah, I use that to share with some friends every now and then.
Yeah, well, please send me this and I will add that to the notes. Definitely.
But there's a bunch of other things that can be amazing in Lisbon.
I like what you were saying, like the good things are the small ones.
Yeah.
I think I've been here for 3 weeks now and feel like I've experienced that,
Yeah.
So I think it's a good tip.
And if you walk through Alfama, trying to avoid the tourist traps, it can also be a very good experience. Because the people that live in Alfama, they've been living there for 30, 40, 50 years. So it's it's like a different city inside the city, for good and bad. But it is very interesting. I really like to walk around that part of town. And what else?
Well, that's already
Tweetly.
What is that?
So the lobsters, we always gather on the first Tuesday of every month on a meetup event on Twitter called Tweetlish. Okay. So we announce on the previous day where it's going to be the next day, and everybody can show up. It's completely free. You show up, you have a drink, and you go home. Okay. Great. And you can meet people from all sides, all walks of life. We have people from IT, from banking, guys from communication like me.
Fantastic. Where is the best way to follow you?
I would say Twitter.
Twitter?
Yeah. It's where I post most of my things. And the blog.
Cool. Yeah, you need to send me the link or I'll find it probably on your Twitter, the blog. And I will put all this in the notes of the episode. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much for this exchange. That was super interesting. And I hope we'll have a chance to meet again in Lisbon, or if you ever come to Paris also, I'll be happy to.
I would love to go to Paris.
I'll try to show you the good cafe place. I see you're a big cafe addict, so.
I like the people. The cafe is just an excuse.
All right.
Whenever I go to these small places, I always end up talking more with whoever is behind the counter. And I always folded an origami crane and I gave them to them. More than just the coffee. Coffee is just an excuse.
Okay.
It's always about the people.
All right. Well, the coffee like you invited me to was also very good. I have so it's the both is great. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening until the end. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I had a super great time with Bruno. We had a lovely coffee before having the chat. He even gave me a pepper crane, which is his specialty. He leaves them in coffee houses. It's super nice. I was even lucky to be invited in his home and to witness all the home automation that he has. I loved it. I'm a very big home automation nerd. So I had a great time. And so here it's the end of the season. It's a very short season again. It was difficult to find interesting people along the way, but I had a great time in Lisbon. I had a great time over this month and a half of traveling. Well, there was an entire month actually spent in Lisbon. The No-Code House project that we did with the French No-Code community was a great success. We're already planning on doing something similar again, maybe this fall in Athens. So let's see where this takes us. It was like kind of a pilot project, but it was great. And I loved Lisbon. Honestly, if you have a chance, you should definitely go. A super exciting city, very lively. It was great also to have a chance to communicate with everyone because people are speaking English very easily. So yeah, it was great. And I hope like that this podcast is going to continue. I don't know yet, but hopefully the next season will be in the US for the Knock-On conference organized by Webflow in San Francisco. So hopefully COVID and all this is not going to prevent it from happening. And so if I go there, I will definitely arrange to meet some of the most interesting people about no-code in the world, because I can imagine that they will all be there. And it's kind of like the one of the aim of this podcast was really to have a chance to meet the most interesting people. So let's see what happens. Be safe, and I'll talk to you soon.